Welcome to the question and answer session. And right here, right now, we'll be taking on some of the questions that has been asked during the lesson one section, introduction to copy editing and the publishing ecosystem. So let's go on to the first question. Is the acquisition manager the same as the acquisition editor? The answer is no. The acquisition editor or the commissioning editor, that's another name for an acquisition editor, is not the same as the acquisition manager. So the acquisition editor identifies and secures the manuscript. The acquisition editor discover a profitable manuscript that can be of benefit to both the organization and the author. So the acquisition editor identifies and secures the manuscript. If you go on my monograph on page number 3, you'll find this information. Your second question is copy editing, also called line editing. Line editing is part of the developmental editing process, that is restructuring content, while copy editing is a line by line grammar checks, stylistic checks, and more information about this are found on page 7 to 9 of the monograph. So the lesson here is that you should take note that copy editing is line by line correction, while line editing is part of structural checks, structural editing. Once again, acquisition editor is not the same as the acquisition manager. The acquisition manager manages the acquisition process, including the person of the acquisition editor. So take note of this and don't forget it. Okay, the next question. Can the roles in the key relations of publishing be switched? It's impossible, but it's doable, but it will be unprofessional. So roles are specialized. This will be my answer. Roles are specialized. Authors create the content. Acquisition editor acquires the manuscripts. The copy editor edits the language. And switching this workflow will disrupt the ecosystem and it will sort of water down specialization. So everyone has its own key role. You can't replace the role of a general practitioner with that of a surgeon. You can't replace the general surgeon with a dentist. So in the publishing ecosystem, they have specialists in different areas because they've been trained and wired to work in certain ways. So they cannot be switched, except in a situation where competence is when someone have competence across one or two areas. Even as at that, you can be specialized in both areas. So everyone has a primary place of strength. So it is the same in the publishing ecosystem. Next question. There are two acquisitions that you have that was mentioned according to your question. Say there are two acquisitions, one listed in the publishing cycle, the other listed in the editorial ecosystem. Are they the same? So also acquisition after distribution. Oh, well, it is the same role. I was just using it to explain the order. So the acquisition after the distribution was an explanatory example to tell you that there is a connection between the acquisition and also the distribution. The data gathered during the acquisition stage help the distributing channels and team to know what target market was in foresight at the point of acquisition. So they can continue the flow from there to ensure that such market is captured. So in the publishing cycle, acquisition stage is the early stage, distribution stage is the last stage. However, there is a connection between the both of them. Why have you acquired this manuscript? Why have you decided to go ahead to publish it? Who is it intended to and intended for? So that we then drive the distribution plan. So I hope that helps you. Okay, let's move on to the next question. I want to know more about the publishing ecosystem. Okay, this is quite inquisitive. So the publishing ecosystem is like a self-contained um community, I would say. Let's put it at that. Imagine a village. There is a king, there is councils, there are people who are carrying the labor works, people who are administering activities, people who are checking the system. So within a publishing system too, there are different points. So it's a collaborative network. The author creates the content, the acquisition editor is the visionary, sees the vision, sees the potential of such manuscripts. The copy editor looks out for language errors and fixes them to ensure that the intention of the author is conveyed clearly. And he does this by using several toolkits and as well engaging and issuing queries to the author to confirm if this is what they intend to while trying to edit. So they don't edit out the original intent of the author. So you'll see more details on page 12 to 14. So there are different kind of peoples, different kind of editors, and they are specialized for different purposes. Now, why does manuscripts need to be checked by the publisher? This is a very important question. Manuscript needs to be checked and validated to ensure and to tick off the box of market viability, to tick off for quality assurance, and to confirm the profitability before investment is made. No publisher is out there just for play, they're in there for business. So they will acquire a manuscript that has the potential of yielding profit. And from this profit, they will benefit as an organization. And outside this profit, the author too stand to get dividends called royalty. So in the lesson notes, you find out that publishers are looking for what to publish that will be profitable. Nobody goes into business with zero intent of not of making profits. Everybody wants to go into business to make profit. So this is their primary reason. All right, let's go on to the next question. This question says I should explain deeply the meaning of developmental editing in the publishing cycle. Developmental editing, as its name implies, is a kind of editing that is targeted at developing the manuscript, meaning that it's sort of is concerned about structure. You can imagine a building, ensuring that it's sitting on the right foundation, they are layered appropriately, and the sequence are correct. So you're looking out for consistency, you're looking out for coherence in the presentation of the idea, you're looking out for clarity, and you're looking out for some levels of balance. The forces, basically. And beyond the forces, they are ensuring that it is arranged the way the targeted audience will be able to consume it. So developmental editing, in a nutshell, shapes the big picture. It restructures the content, it eliminates the gaps and the redundancies, it strengthens the argument, and this precedes copy editing. If you go onto page 4 of the monograph, you'll find more details about this. Manuscripts diagnosis is that section you should look out for. identifying the strengths and the weaknesses. So developmental editing takes care of these concerns. Now, do we only have two types of formats, which you mentioned, APA and Chicago? These are example formats. No, we do not have just only these two types. We have several others, including the Harvard style, the MLA, the Oxford styles, the Art Rules, and more. There are several of them, and recently there's an African style introduced by Professor Peter Okebukola, and it's evolving into this test stage. And at this point, I would say there are several, so you can read out more. But why have I picked these two? These are the common one, and particularly for this discipline of mass communication, you need to know APA, because APA is the style being used. It's called American Psychology Association style. So be familiar with it. We have more than this. However, this is what we have chosen as an example. So if you go on to page 25 of the monograph, you find more details. Next question. Under copy editing, I don't really understand that encode and coded session that I was explaining. Okay, let's put this in a simple way. Language, like for example, English language is a code. Why is it a code? Because it's only those who understands English that can comprehend English. If I'm a Chinese and I always speak Chinese, I read Chinese, I understand Chinese, and you speaking English to me will be strange because speaking to me in a different code I don't understand. Now, when you encode means that you're enabling a code. Encode, you are creating codes. As I'm speaking now, I'm coding words. And because you understand English, you can decode what I'm saying because you are connecting in English. English is our official language of communication. You can imagine if I was speaking in my very local language. I'm an Awori guy, and I'm speaking an Awori, a sub-dialect of Yoruba. To become difficult for you to understand that. So as a content writer, an author, message needs to be coded in a language that the decoders, which is the receivers, will be able to comprehend. So if you have been taught mass communication at the earliest stage appropriately in your first year, you should know the linear model of communication, where you have the sender, you have the channel, the message, and then the receiver. So the sender sends a message through a channel, and through the channel, the receiver gets the message and decodes it. Meaning the sender encodes the message, puts it through a channel that is accessible to both sender and receiver. The receiver receives it, decodes it, and understands it. So meaning is share. Encoding and decoding is the sharing of meaning. I hope this helps you. So shared meaning in between sender and receiver. Next question. When editing a manuscript, how should a copy editor balance enforcing our style and maintaining the author's unique voice, especially if the author's style conflicts the standard grammar or punctuation rules? You need the example. Okay, all right, let's give a clear example of an American writing for a British publisher. We have to have an agreement on the common ground, and this has to be done politely and clear with clarity with terms of references. So if I'm writing as an American, you want to spell the word color as COLOR. But if the terms of reference says we are going to be writing in British English language, then I have to change it to COLOUR. It is now the job of the copy editor to ensure that this consistency is maintained throughout the text. So in this case, the way to balance it is to have a meeting point, to have an agreement, and to stick to with such agreement. So this is a clear example. I hope this helps you. Okay, next question. In the four C's of copy editing, which includes clarity, coherency, consistency, and correctness, is there any of these four that can also be called conciseness? Okay, none of these four can be called conciseness, but one of these four can house concisement. Concisement overlaps clarity and coherence, but it is not part of the four C's that I've identified. So under clarity, you can be concise to ensure that you're clear. Under coherence, you can be concise to ensure that you're coherent in your thought presentation. So none of this, it does not replace it. So, but it can be stacked under either of these two, depending on the function that is meant to be achieved. I hope this helps you. The next question says, what are the other house styles we have aside for APA? I've attempted this question earlier, making it the second time someone is asking. Well, yeah, we have MLA, we have Harvard style, we have um, side them rights, we have varieties, we have even indigenous one apart from APA. The reason I've chosen APA Chicago is because they are relevant to our contest. So take note of that. Another person says, I don't understand what developmental editing is. I believe if you started this video from the beginning, you would have gotten some clarity about this. So the next question is, what do you mean by fixing the picture plot, sir? So now developmental editing has to do with fixing the big picture, ensuring that the big picture is clear to the audience. So you need to ensure that the audience, the readers, have no doubts. And the content have to be developed to ensure it meets this criteria. Every story, every content tells a story. They have a plot. If you have done literature before, and I believe if you don't have a good result in literature, you shouldn't be studying mass comm. Anyway, the point is the plot is a storyline. Is the storyline, is the plot. You understand the content for so developmental editing ensures that there is logical flow. If you see the monograph booklet, um, chapter 1, page 4, under content restructuring and reorganizing chapter, you have clarity on this. So ensure that you try as much as possible to understand this within the context of our of the explanation. Developmental editing is editing and seeing things from perspective of the big picture fix. So the picture plot is like the big picture, the plot, the big story, the big idea, the main goal. So that is it. It has to be fixed for there to be clarity. What is the difference between the role of an acquisition editor and copy editor? Now, acquisition editor source and evaluate manuscripts for the market fit, but copy editor does line by line language and style editing. It is as simple as that. Why the acquisition editor works from the beginning to ensure that the script is obtained and acquired. The copy editor just works with whatever has been acquired to ensure that it's fine for publication. So can one individual be author, editor, and also the proofreader? Well, this is possible in self-publishing, but in professional publishing use case, you need specialists to do their job. Specialists for objectivity, especially to ensure that there's quality. You need specialists. So because it's an ecosystem, everyone is specialized. They're good in different ways. One person's strength is another one's weakness. As an author, you can't find your error or spot them easily. That's why you need a proofreader, you need an editor. it's a different thing. An editor is different from a proofreader. A proofreader don't change your tone, doesn't change it. They just ensure that what you've written, there are no errors there. The editor can modify either for structure, for context, for clarity, and more. But that is just a point. You can't be everything. Like I mentioned, they are specialists. Can one individual be this? Yes, in the case of self-publishing. That is why it is not well credited. So you need to be cleared on this point. It is not that it is undoable, it's just not good. Yeah, I didn't get the CYMK when you were explaining printing digital conversion under publishing circle. Okay, it's a good time to explain it. CYMK is a color code and it stands for cyan, yellow, magenta, and K, which is black. Now, cyan is blue, yellow is yellow, magenta is what gives birth to red, and then K is black. So these are the four colors for printings impression, and from these four colors you can get every other colors. And for digital publishing, we have another color profile called RGB, red, blue, and green. From these three primary colors, you can make secondary colors and other complex colors. So when making impressions, you need to ensure for printing that you have set your color profile to fit printing and the one for digital to fit digital. For printing is CYMK, for digital it is RGB. Don't forget it. So what is the difference between an editor and a copy editor? Okay, this is popping up again. An editor could be a general editor, could be acquisition editor. They are always working with a big picture or the content. The copy editor, they focused on language, grammar, and some other things related to that. So that is just some summary of that. And the next question, does mechanical editing also refers to the grammatical blunder in editing? Yes, mechanical editing fixes grammar and syntax and spelling, punctuation issues. So that is what it means. When you say mechanical, it has to do with technical stuff like grammar issues, syntactic issues, spelling issues, punctuation issues, and even sentence construction, either use of overuse of complex sentences or oversimplification by using simple sentences. So depending on the age group you're writing for, you have to be mindful of your mechanical details. Now, another question says, I need more explanation on the rule of thumb under the editorial ecosystem. Well, rule of thumb is an informal guideline for decision making, e.g., diplomacy is as important as editing skills. If you are very good and you are not diplomatic, you can piss off an author, you can annoy an established author, and they may not patronize your system. So diplomacy is as important and as as your sharp eye. If you are able to figure out errors, you must be able to communicate such errors in a polite manner too, so it doesn't impede on your relationship. Next question. I would like to know more about reliable publishing houses in the country. There are different varieties of publishing companies in the country. I wouldn't mention any for you. You can just say publishing houses in Lagos. It's easy to find on Google. They haven't paid me, so I'm not going to advertise for any of them. But I know the university have a university press, and I know that the monograph is published by Research Africa Publication, which is based in Lagos and London. So these are examples and then of publishing companies. What is the main difference between mechanical editing and copy editing? Yeah, interesting. So mechanical editing fixes grammar, syntax, spelling, which is a subset of copy editing. So a copy editor looks out for mechanical details to fix. So, and they do this under the forces. You know with them already: correctness, coherence, consistency, and clarity. All right, that is that about that. Is it possible for the author to see the final product in the process of production of the book before publishing. Yes, it is very possible that they see it, and this usually happen at the proving stage where the books has been put into layouts. Authors approve the proof before printing. They ensure the same time the proofreader is reading, the authors too are looking out for anything that is not meant to be in there to ensure that it is improved and better. So they have access to the proof before printing. Now, in an industry where marketing and the author's platform often matters more than the quality of the writing itself, how can a copy editor meaningfully push back when their edits might slow down a book path to publication? Or anything that is good, anything that is of standard needs to pass through the system. So in this case, you can use thoughtful or tactful queries to showing impact on the credibility, to ask, to engage the author, to get clarities, to get examples. For example, you can use tactful author queries, which shows impact on the credibility, on the readability, with clear-cut example, meaning that you can be respectful, precise with your questions, and ensure that you prioritize essential edits in the case of high-profile authors, and negotiate with the production manager in order to ensure that what the author believes or thinks should be is what is published. So I believe these are the questions I have now. Thank you very much for engaging up to this time. Our next lesson is on the copy editors toolkits, and then we'll be learning about proofreading marks and the house style. So please review your works or revisit the previous lecture to refresh your memory before the next class. And if you are yet to complete your tasks, do what is needful, and then we'll catch up in our next lesson.